2 seconds of a recent one worth of new footage, a representative example of what I believe most of the things I excluded to be like. TV spots on the official YouTube account, and they all hover around the 50% new category of footage when you get a new short TV spot. So we can conclude from the above proportion of the new footage, and it's trended down somewhat since we first got the trailer in October, but not remarkably so, he says. Now, this is a lot more interesting. The Instagram teaser, while almost entirely new, was so short that it still shows up as a huge dip in what was otherwise a linear build-up to the crescendo of the theatrical trailer. The international variant then comes along a few days later, and while the spine of it was largely the same, it still adds about half as much new content as the first one. And after that, though the TV advertising, even counting the clip, are a relative trickle on average, of those entries contributed about 10 seconds to each total. All right, so let me get to the meat of this whole thing. I went through and highlighted this and didn't realize how long it was going to be, which happens on my radio show all the time. So, they've maintained a steady news stream of footage over the last month. The entire TV campaign put together is still way less than the big helping we got back on October 19th. And I doubt that'll have changed much by December 18th. At most, think of it as a third trailer cut into 10 or so pieces and then dished out at 10 seconds at a time. The rest of it is just showing us the same stuff over and over again. Altogether, the cumulative running time, excluding the titles, is 8 minutes, 2 seconds, and 8 frames. Out of those 8 minutes and change, the total amount of unique footage adds up to 5 minutes, 31 seconds, and 22 frames. If you sat and watched them all back to back, you'd be seeing new footage about 2/3 of the time. And if the reported running time of 2 hours and 16 minutes is correct, then the next time someone curses Disney for showing too much of The Force Awakens ahead of time, you can reassure them that they've only seen about 4% of the film. Dude, how awesome is that? See, now I don't feel so bad. Because I was thinking for a moment that perhaps, I was seeing too much, and I don't know, do I want to watch anymore? We've only seen 4% of this movie. I honestly don't know how I'm going to contain myself. Logan, my 13-year-old, is going to see it with me on Thursday the 17th, and I told him, I go, I'm just going to be such a mess by the time that movie starts till it ends. There was an interview with Daisy Ridley on, I think it was Good Morning America. Anyway, she was being interviewed, and she saw the movie, and she said she kept it cool when she got out of the theater, but then when she got in the car and her entire flight back to England, she said she was crying all the way home. Right? Now, there's more to this. This is fun. I like this part of it, of this article too. So if you've only seen 4%, roughly about 8 minutes, 2 seconds, and 8 frames of footage. Okay? I mean, and think about how much time we all have spent, if you are a fellow podcaster or just a Star Wars fan, or listen to this podcast, think about how much time that we have spent on 8 minutes. What are we going to do when we have 136 minutes or whatever the time is, when we have 2 hours and 16 minutes to deal with? You see, this goes back to what I was saying at the start of the show, in that, where I was feeling, bittersweet about us nearing the end of this movie. And, then I went, what am I worried about, man? We're going to have a whole movie to digest. And I don't think we're going to get all the answers that we expect to get either. Which is still pretty amazing that we do not know the lineage of these characters and we're still guessing. For all the leaks that are out there, we still don't have confirmation on who is related to whom. Who is related to whom? Who? Right, something like that. Let me get back to this. Part of the process this guy used to get his data involved color coding the shots by location so they could quickly scan for certain ones. They ended up dividing everything into 6 categories. So you've got Jakku Raid, Takodana, or Dana, Starkiller Base, Lightsaber Forest, and then space/unsure. So here's the percentage that we've seen of the film, right? And this really plays into that. This really ends up playing into the thought that we've only seen the first third of the movie, and it almost confirms it. All right? So here you go. So in terms of the Jakku raid, which takes place on Jakku, 7% of the footage you've seen, okay, 34 seconds we've seen of the Jakku raid. 34 seconds of the Jakku raid. Of Jakku, 38% of all the footage you've seen, 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Takodana, 1 minute 41, 21%, 7% of Starkiller Base, only 32 seconds. Lightsaber Forest, 24 seconds, only 5%, which we're pretty sure is also still Starkiller Base, right? So you can essentially attach that 5 to that make it 12% total for whatever planet that is, and speculation that it's Ilum. But I'm not going to get into that right now for those that are. There was a map that came out in the Empire article showing the galaxy, and it showed Starkiller Base origin point. And so that it was an origin point got people speculating that because it was an origin point, that means that it can move, or perhaps they retrofitted the planet to become Starkiller Base, and it was right in the same location as Ilum, which is canon and is the planet where the Jedi go to get their lightsaber crystals. And if that is indeed Ilum, then maybe they're using the lightsaber crystals to power the Starkiller Base weapon, which they call, I guess, is in the movie. They keep calling it the nickname of the Sunsucker. Okay, all right, and then space/unsure, 22%, 1 minute and 46. So all of this breaks down to show that it is kind of true that we've only seen, because Jakku, and Takodana, they make up the majority of all the footage that we've seen. I do the cursor map 40, 50, 60, 70. Yeah, almost, 70% of what we've seen of the footage is made up of Jakku and Takodana. And we're fairly certain, based off of what we know about the movie, that that takes place in the first half of the film. So for those that keep saying that, that's the that we've only seen that first third of the movie is what I'm trying to get to. All right, one more point on this, and it looks like we are going to split up the show here into two segments. Again, if you're listening to us on the podcast, it doesn't matter, but because of me being live, I can only do it in 45-minute increments because I'm cheap that way. I'm going to change it after the movie comes out, but I'm just waiting for the movie to come out. So we'll stop, and then we'll restart again live here in a moment. And again, if you're listening to the podcast, it doesn't matter. You're going to hear music. I'm going to go quiet, and then it's going to start back up again. It's going to be like magic, right? Exactly.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
So, the conclusion of this 538 article. Don't really have any real conclusions to draw. I just thought it would be interesting, surprising to no one, that we spent most of the time on Jakku and the least amount of time in the lightsaber forest, where it seems as if some serious stuff goes down. They also say I should point out that I actually kind of didn't want to do this. Drilling down this hard into the footage meant piecing together a few things that I hadn't already, which for someone who's not especially anxious to know the precise structure of the movie was a little unfortunate. And that's just from an editing standpoint. I saw some of these shots so many times that when they finally pop up in the movie, it's bound to pull me out of it for a moment. The same way that seeing a new take of Chewie We're Home would for people who watched that teaser a million times. Right? The fact that the magic number ended up being so low in 4% bore that out. Just because we're seeing a lot of Force Awakens these days doesn't mean that we're seeing a lot of it. And you know what? He makes a really, really good point there at the end of the article. Because, if you're anything like me, you know that when you watch the trailers of a movie, I've done this, but I mean, this has happened, hundreds of times. You watch the trailer of a movie, and when you go see the movie, I'll sit there and I go, okay, well, I haven't seen this scene yet, so the movie must not be over yet. And I wish I didn't do that. I wish that didn't happen. I wish I was able to wish away my feelings. No, I wish I was able to not allow that to affect me, but unfortunately, it does. And it's going to happen with this movie. There's one particular shot of an X-Wing fighter over Maz Kanata's castle, flying, from top and then into camera view from behind and shooting a TIE fighter. And I love the shot because you can see that it specifically takes multiple laser blast to dismantle the TIE fighter before it blows up, and that attention to detail is awesome. But I've seen that shot so many times because it's in almost every single TV spot and in all the trailers that I know that when I see that shot in the movie, I'm going to go, oh, there's that shot, right? But you know what? I don't care. It's totally worth it. All right, so we'll take a quick break, and we'll get back to Part 2 of episode 30 of the My Nerd World podcast. There was an article I was going to share with you, and then I started reading it, and I decided not to. I'll tell you what it was about and why I'm not going to share it with you. Plus, George Lucas hasn't been on the internet in 15 years. I'm not sure I believe that. He also saw the movie. I'll tell you what George Lucas had to say about The Force Awakens coming up. And Carrie Fisher has chimed in on the Slave Leia bikini controversy, and I think you'll find her comments to be rather surprising. Plus, we'll revisit A New Hope on my personal journey to The Force Awakens coming up on Part 2. Don't go anywhere of episode 30 of the My Nerd World and Star Wars podcast. So may the Force be with you. Not always, because I'm back here in just a minute.
The dark side